Hi, friends. This is a recording about how we deeply listen. In Zen, we say it's not what we do, it's how we do it. It's the qualities we show up with. Consider that how we listen is how we perceive. And so, just to begin, as I speak, I invite you to rest in the tripod of connection with the earth, connection with breath, and the practice of listening. Let's never think of listening as a technique. Even the word practice is interesting because, in my experience, deep listening is who and what we actually are. It's our most natural state. So, if we understand that meditation is not something we do, but who and what we actually are, a way of remembering this, then we can proceed with listening as practice. And so I want to emphasize that I believe we need to rewild our listening, that we're a severely over-civilized society. And what that means is we spend way too much time up in our heads and way too much time in mental effort, bringing mental effort even to things like listening, bringing activity and action to those things which actually require doing less rather than more. And so consider that as we deeply listen, the relational field reveals itself to us, both within and out. We deepen our pathways of connection internally with ourselves and the subtle body and emotions and heart, and we deepen our awareness of field consciousness, or what's around us, the living matrix of nature we exist in, and we deepen our awareness of the human relational field, the sense and palpable experience of the field as shared, presence as shared. This is perhaps the most important piece. So there are some encouragements, and you want to honor your own organic learning curve with embodying this way of listening. It's always important to remember that the starting point is one's connection with the earth. So simply right now, bringing awareness to how you are rooted in your body, upon the surface beneath you, a sense of feeling the earth coming up to support you, a sense of your body relaxing into the support of the ground below, finding your anchor in gravity, in the exact here and now that is yours and yours only on planet Earth. We also anchor and ground ourselves in spaciousness, or more, we could say, the horizontal field. The deeper we go in meditation, there's an expansion of 360 degrees awareness, a pure open awareness that we learn to rest in. Even for the practice of listening, first grounding yourself in gravity and then in space, the vertical and the horizontal, is very, very useful. We could also say that this spacious field is the place where you're opening curiosity, where you're resting in, I don't know. And so, as I've emphasized already, beginner's mind, perhaps for some of you the metaphor of hollow bone really works. The invitation to show up open and empty to whatever degree you can access. Openness, emptiness, don't know mind. Consider that listening deeply is a practice of simultaneously resting in I don't know, resting in not knowing, while accessing the deepest knowing there is, and that is the knowing that comes through direct experience. Not a story in the head, not an opinion or a good, bad, right, wrong, like this, don't like this. Direct experience. What are your impressions through awareness itself in this moment? And so this listening we're talking about is not just auditory. It's tactile listening. It's listening with every cell in our body. It's listening beyond the left brain, cognitive mind. This listening can include cognitive perception, like you listening to my words. You might be processing it that way. It also includes listening simply to vibration, resonance, just the energetic exchange that's happening. Maybe think of this as listening from your belly and your bones. And third, it includes listening from the heart, listening to our shared heart. You might experience this more through the emotions and feeling tone, the heart space I'm emitting through what I'm sharing right now. So we show up as open as we can in curiosity. And a really important part of this is we release agenda. We release agenda or the kind of ego goals that might come up when, let's say, I'm listening to you, but I really want to solve what you're saying, or I'm listening to you in order to come to a conclusion and help you come to a conclusion. I'm listening to someone's words so that I can extract, and yes, we can try to extract even insights. There's a forward leaning to that. There's a leaning forward right now in your body. Practice energetically leaning forward and just seeing how that feels. When I'm somatically forward leaning, maybe hurrying, rushing, holding agenda, maybe just a bit focused on me or in survival mode, how does that feel? And likewise, how does it feel to lean back a bit too much? Maybe showing up kind of half-ass, maybe in procrastination, maybe in distraction. We all lean forward and lean back sometimes, but we can bring awareness to, can I invite myself to rest at center, to take my seat from center, and to show up to the relational field at least aware of agenda. We'll talk more about, when we explore the principles of relational mindfulness, some of the agendas ego carries. And we'll talk about them with compassion and acceptance, but how fabulous that we can be aware of those agendas and instead show up just open, available to attend to life within and out. Remember, attention as the most subtle form of love. So the next encouragement is to consider that when we're listening, we are listening to the organismic truths that are emergent, moment by moment, that life presents, that a human we're listening to presents. We're resting in emergence. And this is really important because this is such a nourishing resting place. Often I describe meditation as listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment, as a teacher of emergence. But if we're listening to try to get to an end goal, as I already said, or listening to try to take that person somewhere, which will sometimes occur when I start teaching inquiry, you might notice a part of you trying to get somewhere with it. Instead, to really learn to rest in the unfolding. Next, we can't rest in the unfolding unless we're willing to rest in the pause, to rest in the spaces between words, the spaces between thoughts, the spaces that can feel awkward sometimes, the spaces the doing part of our psyche might want to fill, but the integrity of our listening exists in our willingness to be with what is, and most importantly, to be spacious. Let's be spacious listeners, especially when listening to our own self. Deep listening, the next encouragement, it requires us to release marketplace mentality. And this has to do, yes, with listening with an agenda, but also invites us to be aware of any ways that transactional interactions, transactional communications has conditioned us. And to just notice as an informal practice throughout our day, when do I find myself having a transactional communication with someone that doesn't need to be transactional, or can be both transactional and a heart-to-heart communication. And folks, yes, even with someone we're navigating a issue on the phone about health insurance. It really doesn't matter what it is, we can play with this. Next is to invite the spirit of play. So we're not seeing deep listening as a should or a set of standards, or I'm doing it right, I'm doing it wrong. We listen through our bodies, our animal bodies, our earth bodies are much more equipped than the modern human expert mind to deeply listen. It's our body's innate receptivity as part of the living intelligence of nature and not separate from it. And so when we bring play into it, and there are times I'll invite play in a particular way, but it's more an attitude of mind for you to bring to your daily listening, to playing with your perception lens, playing with ways of softening awareness even more fully, playing with softening effort. Let yourself play. Notice how it feels to listen, as I describe in relational mindfulness. As a child, the game I played of imagining that my whole body was an ear, and what happened through me when I gave myself to that kind of play. Okay? The next encouragement is to effort less. Deep listening does not take active effort. Paying attention is the effort it takes. But we're paying soft attention, not like a harsh teacher said to us in a judgmental, critical voice as a kid, pay attention. We're learning to soften our attention, to soften awareness. And this is important. This softening of awareness allows our deep listening to be all-inclusive. We're not zeroed in on one teeny tiny detail, like when we soften the gaze of our eyes. It can go from a single pointed focus, or focus on a detail, or judging something, to just a relaxed taking life in as whole, taking life in as system, through the system of our body. This is an all-inclusive awareness. So we're listening from compassionate neutrality. Someone tells us something beautiful and we let that in fully, and someone tells us something painful and we let ourselves be with that fully as well. Compassionate neutrality, not taking personally, but in an all-inclusive way, being with what is, because it's not what's brought to us, it's the quality of love and patience and wholeness that invites the whole world into wholeness. It's very simple. It's a quality of presence. Many of you know this well. This embodied listening can sometimes be described as a tactile listening. and I'm reminded of the Zen koan to listen with one's feet. Um, to through this play, learn to listen through touch as well, and to listen in a way that simply is open to receiving energetic imprints, information. What does life have to communicate with you through your earth body? And the next encouragement is, rather than projecting meaning, you're really invited to shed the skin of meaning again and again, to simply meet what you're listening to with openness and wonder and this kind of fascination, I would call it. This points to what I shared earlier about being both simultaneously in not knowing, and how that allows for the deepest knowing there is through direct experience. Okay. Folks, go outside and find a tree to listen to with your hands and give yourself a spacious period of time without agenda to just listen and be with and take in the textures of this tree, the temperature, the shapes, the information. See what I mean by direct experience when you play in that way, okay? And you're saying to this tree, I don't know you. Show me who you are. That's the kind of generosity. Instead of, and everyone consider this, how often we listen to someone else or to ourselves, and there is a bit of a readiness in the mind to project based on how the person's dressed, what the person's saying, the person's voice, the person's age. It doesn't really matter. There's so many cues we take that's like, I'm going to go into meaning. And often that comes from what's a similar experience I've had of what they're saying that it brings back to me instead of just listening. So a few more encouragements. Listening deeply is reciprocal, and this is something you don't have to understand as you hear these words right now. It will explain itself as it goes, but it's a reciprocal experience, like compassion is a reciprocal experience. When we're resting in compassion and offering that to another, we're feeling that and receiving that equally ourselves. Listening is the same. It's like a soft, kind, warm lap, or depending on the context, a clear, reflective mirror, but we get to receive it at the same time as giving it. So that whole notion of I'm separate from you, I'm doing listening for you, I could pass fail at this, I'm a good listener, like all of that just gets sort of dissolved when we remember the way of listening as a way of showing up to life for ourselves and for life. Deep listening is a great revealer. It's a fabulous revealer. And so as we practice and engage in opening up our receptivity, we get to see our blocks to intimacy, because deep listening makes all of life intimate for us. We get to see our projections. We get to see our fixations that keep us locked at times in a kind of self-absorption rather than being available. We just get to see all that. So get ready to see and be aware that you want to be seen kindly and compassionately. Consciousness is not always pretty, okay? You will see things that you say, oh gosh, that makes me want to constrict and contract when I recognize that trait is still within me, or whatever. And I'll give you guidance for working with that. But we're practicing compassionate awareness, and we're saying, thank you. Thank you so much for helping me to see this, helping me to see what's seducing me into suffering mind, into the trance of separation when that's not really who I am. Thank you. Deep listening requires us to take responsibility, passionate, joyful responsibility for our unconscious biases. So this will all get revealed, and this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Trust me. Deep listening places us on shared ground and makes us aware of our shared ground. Even in a moment conflict arises, we learn to sense into the shared ground. And this is really, really important because there's so much momentum in today's world for a sense of living in separate, isolated islands, loneliness, me against you, competition, difference, othering difference. And so, shared ground. This is the ground of deep listening. We listen through our earth bodies, which know shared ground in every moment. No separation. Yeah. Deep listening extends to every form of life. The human world, the more than human world, the visible and invisible world, depending on your quality of openness. Deep listening extends both within and out. Yesterday, I had a profound experience of listening to a stone and receiving the experience of being listened, the stone listening to me. This is something we can go into a little bit later in our course, but we're talking about every form of life, and every expression of life carries consciousness. I want to emphasize again that deep listening is reciprocal and that it extends beyond I know to the simultaneity of I don't know and I know from the deepest part of me, because I'm here simply receiving what is, maybe receiving truth from my heart instead of a story from the conditioned mind, maybe receiving the full presence and experience of the human being I'm sitting with, knowing them deeply, maybe receiving very, very clear, crystal clear instruction from listening to a dream. So listening is about resting in I don't know while experiencing true knowing. And I want to emphasize that if one is interested in becoming a deep listener, one has to be very available for what you receive, rather than, you know what, I'm going to keep filing. I like these pieces of information I'm receiving about myself or another or the world, and I'm going to file all those others in my shutting down to those mode. There's a way that the conditioned mind tends to gravitate towards evidence of what it already knows as true or thinks it knows, and to leave everything else out. And I heard a statistic that human beings are cutting off and cutting out like 75% of what we take in because we're only letting in a teeny tiny percent if it matches with our already existing truth. Deep listening is a path for reclaiming the authority of the shared heart and nature's intelligence. And deep listening is about less rather than more effort. The last thing I want to emphasize about deep listening is that it's contagious. And so, how incredible, in the same way that it's reciprocal, we feel ourselves resting in the shared field of belonging when we listen to and are listened to. But equally, when we show up for another or for a group in deep listening, there's a contagion factor. It's a quality of relational presence that gets transmitted. This cannot completely get transmitted through words or through a book, though I've written books that point to it, but through direct experience of one another. This is the most powerful way. So please pause and take in a deep, full body breath. Notice how this teaching is impacting you. If there are any notes you want to make after watching this, or any encouragements you want to post for yourself, which can sometimes be useful to post an encouragement here or there in your office space or on your altar for how you meet deep listening this week and in the weeks to come. That's very, very valuable. Thank you so much, friends.